Hello and welcome to another episode of Pokémath. My name is Stefan Eriksson, and today we got something special for you. I am joined by three commentators who all commentated for Pokemon, so we got a lot of interesting stories lined up for you. I'm going to ask them a lot of cool stuff, how it is to be a commentator, and simply just learn a little behind the scenes. So without further ado, I would like to welcome the Joe from Omnipoke. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. My pleasure. And then I have Ross from PG Radio. Welcome, Ross.
Who definitely was not late to this recording.
Certainly not at all, right? Not only
That
40 minutes late or something. What is most important, we're all here now, right? And last but not least, we got a dual citizen, British, Brazilian, living in Denmark, Freya Pierce.
Right.
Welcome here.
Thanks a lot, Stefan. How you doing?
All good here. I'm happy everybody could be here and happy we all could get together and have this nice little interview to hear a little more about, well, how it is to be a commentator for Pokemon. Yeah. So what I would like to start with, and let's just start with the Joe, right? So Joe, how did you get into commentating in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the commentary was going on a lot earlier in America than it was for the European guys. So when they were on the lookout eventually to have some commentary for initially the national championships, it was Italian, German, and the British national championships. They were looking for people. There were interviews. I imagine I was on the short list mostly just because I was already creating Pokemon-related content. And yeah, just jumped at the chance really because commentating, as it turns out, is excellent fun.
Oh, that sounds also like, I know it's been going on for quite some years and people at different entry points, but what about you, Freya? How did you get into commentating in the first place?
Yeah, it's got kind of a similar story, I guess. So, I'd also been aware that streams were happening in the US for a while. I was wondering when they'd come to Europe. But for me personally, I was actually one of the first few people doing commentary on like unofficial live streams at various tournaments in the UK. So there'd been like Wakefield TCG, for example. I know they were doing like a few streams around the place. There was a stream that happened at UK Nationals, which I'm sure Ross will talk about in 2015 that I was part of as well. And yeah, I guess the unofficial stream commentaries that I did ended up putting me on the shortlist. I was approached for interviews, and then now here I am commentating for Pokemon.
I think it's super cool, and you're also one of the few who actually just flew to another continent and then did it all in Portuguese because, well, I didn't know in the beginning that you spoke Portuguese. At some point, I just see you on stream, I'm like, wait, did they dub this? What? No, he's actually speaking Portuguese.
Yeah, no, yeah, it was really good fun. So yeah, for some of the interviews with the Brazilian players, they don't quite a few of them don't speak English that much. So I was kind of asking questions to the camera, then translating on the fly, when then translating the answers back, which is a lot harder than it looks. And I'm fairly sure if there was like some Portuguese speaker who was like being a little bit scrutinized, and he'd probably pick up like a few like errors in my translation. But doing that on the fly is very, very hard, as I discovered. But it's a cool thing to be able to do.
I can only say when I watched this here, you made it look incredibly easy. So I was very impressed. Like I was like just sitting there like, wow, he just pulled this off and seemed just fluent in both languages, just jumping back and forth. That was really, really cool to watch and hear, of course. And what about you, Ross? How did you get into all this?
I mean, with anything like this, my advice and I taught for many years, I've said it to all of my students all of the time, if you want to get into doing something, just go and do it. So I wanted to do commentary, and obviously I'd seen the US streams, and that was what I aspired to, so I just went and did it. I grabbed a video camera, I did quite a lot. If you go to the early days of my channel, this was what the majority of the content was. I'd rock up to a tournament, I'd set up a table with a camera on, and I would grab two people I thought would be interesting in game-wise. They would go to this table, they would press record, and then they would stop at the end of their game. Well, I was off playing in another round, and then at the end of the tournament, I'd just go home. And sometimes I would literally go home and immediately spend just all evening commentating like 4 or 5 games of Pokemon. Cool. Then we ended up at UK Nationals 2015, where there was an unofficial stream, but it was run with the blessing of the tournament organizers. And I did I think it was 9 rounds day one. I did that solo. 9 rounds, no break, no co-commentator, just me. Because back in 2015, commentary wasn't trendy. Nowadays, it's really easy to find people who want to commentate. Not the case 6 years ago. So no one wanted to join me day one. Did it all by myself. Come top 8, top cut, loads of people want to join in. There were a couple of people who shall remain nameless that were coming up to me at the event getting really shirty with me because I wouldn't invite them to co-commentate. Bearing in mind the number of spots I had were very, very limited. And I'm like, well, you could have literally been here all day yesterday, but you chose to play instead. I don't know, Freya was on one of those games with me as well. And these games for the UK Nationals are all up on my channel. And then the goal was always, when Pokemon want a European team, I wanted them to have to come and interview me because I was the guy that was already doing it. And apparently it worked.
Well, it certainly worked. Now we see you basically all over the place, right? It's been one hell of a journey. And like with that said, let me go. So you all judged. I was going to say, well, commentated. You didn't. Well, let's not mix up a couple of things here. But how does a typical day as a commentator look, Freya? How would you say it is, like from sun up to sunset?
So yeah, I guess we had to get up like relatively early because we've got to be there before all like the players come in because we've got to do a lot of prep work and such. We basically had like a schedule where we're sort of like paired up with like different people, and it gives an idea of like what games we're doing for actual course of the day, so we know when we'll be on and when we'll be off. And then in the games that we're off, either we're off entirely actually relaxing, or in a lot of cases we're looking ahead and we're looking at what decks people have access to on the day, or what kind of what matchups and pairings there's going to be, so that we can have some input into what games actually get selected for the live stream, because we want to make sure that the matchup's interesting, want to make sure that the big name players are featured. So that's kind of like what goes into it. Yeah, it's kind of a bit schedule of doing like the prep work for the upcoming games, as well as just actually being on stream for that schedule.
That's anything you would like to add on this, Ross?
I mean, commentary as a whole, I love it. Like the entire day is just absolutely brilliant. We generally, like all the casters together, we're staying in the same hotel, we meet in the lobby in the morning, we go over together. And like, let's say, like Freya said, when we're not commentating, we're sitting backstage, we're watching the games, we're chatting in the evening, we're generally playing games, or someone usually brings a cube nowadays, which I know Joe is all about the cubing. And it's just an entire day of like, how can we fit more Pokemon in? Like, some of the people that have worked with us in the past are like, every time we leave you alone for 2 seconds, you find a flat surface and start playing a game. And we're like, yeah, this is literally why you hired us, because we've got that level of obsession. But while we're talking about the streams, I've got to give a shout out to the dudes behind the scenes, because, I mean, it's a long day for us, but we rock up for rehearsals like the day before, and they've been there for hours setting up. Final finishes, everyone sets up, we kind of head back to the hotel, and then the backstage crew have got to start taking it all down. They work so much harder than we do, and whenever you're watching a stream, Pokemon or otherwise, just give some love and some thought to people actually setting it up to run, because they put in so much more work than the people you see on screen, and they are so much more like important than we are.
How to downplay yourself right there, right? But indeed, it wouldn't work without all the people setting this up. I think as a player, you're tired at the end of the day. You can only imagine how tired they are, like really. What about you, Joe? Anything you would love to add here?
Yeah, it's actually quite mentally tiring to do a lot of commentary as well, because it's almost like you're playing both sides of a game when you're trying to do the analytics, trying to see where both players' lines of play are, what they're trying to reach each turn. So it's pretty full on. It feels like you've played your own tournament, and you're also trying to have good on-screen presence and be high energy the whole time. So we're full of energy drinks and junk food most of the time backstage. A load of strepsils as well, because your throat gets super worn out after a couple of days of tournaments, that's for sure. So yeah, it's a full-on experience for sure.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say, Joe, I'm glad you brought up energy drinks, because like that just reminded me of something. I think the first time, or one of the first times I ever had an energy drink, was actually at a Pokemon tournament, because I'm not one for energy drinks usually. But I remember like one of the times I thought, no, you know what? There's a Red Bull here. I need this. I'm sorry, I don't care, and I just and I had it, and lo and behold, it actually worked, shockingly enough.
While we're here, the XL in London, great venue, but those giant artificial venues, they pump air in and it destroys your throat over the course of a weekend. Yeah. It is so much harder than in just kind of like your average town hall. It's weird, and it sounds kind of like we're crying for no reason, but it's a genuine thing.
You know it even as a player, you can just feel it. Also,
oh yeah.
Also in America, when they pump the AC the whole time, it just destroys you after a day or two like that. It's really harsh. And I'm so happy that Joe actually mentioned the whole thing about keeping up energy, because I always wanted to know as a commentator, how do you keep up energy when you're sitting there and commentating somebody playing like stall or something, try to make a game interesting? When you look at it, it's clearly not that interesting. So how do you do it?
That for me?
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? I mean, we've all been in those situations where someone draw passes, or you're going into one of those matchups. You're trying to draw on other things outside of the game. There's actually a lot of downtime in between, in during gameplay, just because there's a lot of shuffling and a lot of decision making that the players are coming up with. So the whole time we are really filling air. It's not just easy to say like, oh, he attaches here, he promotes this. That's only like a one-liner. You need to really go into why they're doing these things, what they're looking to accomplish, and what their overall game plan is. And when it is control gameplay, it's obviously to stop the opponent playing in a lot of situations. So drawing on all outs your opponent's looking towards and that sort of thing is all really important to do. It's actually the most difficult is when judge rulings happen. That's when it gets pretty awkward, because we don't know the resolution. We're kind of in the dark. We don't have direct access to the judge. We can't hear the players at the table and the judge sort of doing the rulings. So it feels awkward to say what we think could be happening for a judge ruling, because we don't know for certain. Whereas normally we know what's going on in Pokemon. We're sort of in control. We can see what's happening. We can say what's happening. We're on it in that regard. But even though we have passed our judge licenses and stuff a few times over, and some people have judged before. I know I haven't done judging, but some of these other guys have literally sat at the tables judging. But you don't feel confident that what you would rule would be the same as what actually happens, especially because they make exceptions when you're on stream, because they would prefer to resolve a game state when it might be a little bit more difficult to normally, just for the sake of the stream. So trying to fill that dead air is when it gets most difficult, I'd say.
It sounds really challenging. Is there any events that's been like standing out in this aspect, like where there's really been some very difficult judge calls or something like that?
I think we all have the same one in mind, don't we?
What did I touch here, guys?
There was the Bilbao SPE had two it was one or two notable like extended sort of like judge free, was it? I can't remember.
Two, but they were right one after. They were very close together.
That was it, and then it was on stream as well, and there was lots of complex rulings involved. There was attempts like reversal of the game state, which like actually made things worse in some instances. It was I think that was a lessons learned for everyone, I think, from that one.
Yeah, I think someone tried using a teammates when they hadn't had a Pokemon KO'd the previous turn, or it might have been KO'd by poison and that doesn't activate teammates. Correct. I think that was actually it, which is how it ended up getting really awkward. And then there was something else coming in very shortly afterwards as well, you got to give a lot of love to the judges and to everyone involved. I mean, judging on stream is stressful. Playing on stream is stressful. Commentating, I'm going to be honest, for me, the energy just comes from I absolutely adore this. Like, I'm a 35-year-old man, and I found my favorite thing in the world. I found the thing that I am best at in the world, and it is talking about a children's card game. Which, like, imagine if I put this much time and effort into physics or medicine or something actually useful to the world. I could be contributing. So for me, the energy is easy. I'm a high-energy dude, and I love what I'm doing here. But there are times, and the thing for me with a judge ruling is the uncertainty. So Joe said about commentating when we've got the slow games. The thing about slow games is, if you're experienced like we are and you've played those games, you've watched those games, you know what's going to happen. Every so often you'll be surprised, but it's going to take 15 minutes, but I know it's going to be this, then, and then it will end. So you can time your commentary. You can go, this is going to take a couple minutes. I'll tell a little story about when I played the deck. Or I'll refer to a previous game we watched, or I'll throw out a little fact about the card or the set it came in, or there is so much you can talk about, at least I can, with Pokemon. There's so much out there. And and you can basically time it, and it's not so bad. And, when you're new, you just, like, repeat yourself over and over, and then you quickly learn. You're like, that's not how you do it. Let's tell some stories. With judge rulings, I could sit there for 10 minutes, telling some equivalent stories, referring to old games, and then they rule it a different way. And everything you've said is pointless and irrelevant, and you have wasted the audience's time, and I know this sounds lame, and I'm sorry for that, but whether it's commentary or videos or podcasts, I am always thinking, don't waste their time, don't waste their time, don't waste their time. People are giving up their time to watch you and listen to you. Make it worth their while. And that's why I struggle with judge calls, because, you know, I've done judging. I've passed it. It's lapsed at the moment, but I've judged a bunch of smaller events. I have passed, I think, 4 times the professor exam over the years, but I don't know what they're going to judge. And it's that uncertainty of you could be lying, always in the back of my head, which is just, that's the only time I get really nervous, because I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. I don't think lying is the right way to put it, but it's just that you could be making a mistake here. I think is like the best way, the more diplomatic way to put it.
It would just be in the
Too
back of
harsh
your
on
head the
myself.
whole time, I guess,
Yeah,
like just telling you, like, hey.
Yeah.
No, but this also puts me direct to the next path here. Like, is there any, like I hear about this fantastic event in Bilbao where a lot of happened, also for the commentary side, but also for the players, stressful, and for the judges especially here. But is there any on top of your head, like any most memorable game you ever commentated, Joe?
Yeah, my most memorable one that springs to mind is I think it was round 3 of EUIC 2018, and it was the first time I got to see Zoropod in action. So Tord Reklev was coming up against Igor Costa, I believe it was, 2 expert players of the game. Igor was playing Zoro Decidueye, which at the time I thought was, going into this tournament, the best deck. And I thought the only way to play Zoroark, really, outside of playing like a straight Zoroark with the stand-in and the break and that sort of thing. But in comes Tord with this brand new wacky engine. You're playing 3 Bridgets in your deck, and 3 like field blowers, a bunch of enhanced hammers, and, you know, a really unconventional way of playing Pokemon. And he basically just tears Igor apart in this quick 2-0 basically. And I'm basically sat there commentating this entire time, loving watching this basically poetry and motion from Tord, but also in the back of my head thinking, this is the next 8 months of Pokemon. Tord has shown us the way that this is going to completely change the landscape of the meta, and Zoroark did indeed do that for the rest of the time. So it was just amazing to sort of have the jaw drop moment of like, wow, he's cracked it. He's absolutely blown this tournament wide open. He ends up winning this tournament as well. And it's not like on that round 3 I thought he'd win immediately, but I knew that then he was probably playing the best deck in the game possible.
Yeah. And not only that as well, but I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that, Joe, because to me, like that tournament, that was basically where Tord started to cement his legacy as he's known now, right? Because before he was always known as like, yeah, one of the best in Norway, pretty good player overall. But that was the start of his like run of like 3 internationals wins that led him to be cemented as like one of the best in the whole world. And that's really Tord as we know him now, his current legacy. It started there.
It's absolutely insane to watch, because he wins the first, and then he goes even on to win the second, and people were joking like, he's probably going to win the third, and then he actually pulls it off, and you're just sitting there like, that's amazing. What? So now we just missed the 4th one. That didn't come. That didn't come, right? But it was 3 in a row. It's an absolutely insane achievement, and he indeed just Zorak plus something. Zorak was not necessarily just a draw, it was also just attack, or it was just super good. With Lycanroc, he even went down to Oceania, I believe it was, and added with Gardevoir and completely smashed the event again.
Well, I was down on that one, and that one was weird. I was commentating with Kyle at the time, and like that was the story, right? That was the big story all weekend. Can Tord make it free? and if you watch back the broadcast, Kyle and I referenced it so many times, but we're thinking like it's an international championship. It's so difficult to win, and like as the tournament went on and on and on, we're just kind of like, he is actually going to go and do it again. And like you say, it was Gardevoir Zoroark, and it was just at that time where it was. I think it was an interview with was it Robin? I want to say Robin Schultz.
Let's insert Robin Schultz for now. Then he can come and correct it if it's wrong.
And in the interview, and he was just kind of like, look, we started from a point of you put Zoroark with anything and it's good, so we just started playing around with other partners, and we were like, Gardevoir! And then they went and won an international championship.
Yes,
but
amazing achievement, amazing to watch.
I like Australia.
It was
that one deck had way too much like breaking of the rules. Like you could attack strategies, you could stack your deck and then draw into your deck. You had like max potion puzzle. Like there was so much cheating. It was insane.
It was like bending the rules to your favor the whole time you're playing it.
Absolutely.
I play in the next regional after in Malmö. I meet Tord, and then he plays. So I was like, oh, Tord made a good deck. I'm just gonna try it out. It went fairly well. I meet Tord the last round of Swiss, and he plays the next iteration with Rewild. I pulled it somehow to it. Yeah, that was really scary. It ended in a tie, and nobody got to day 2, but okay. I think that was my best result ever against Tord, but okay, besides the point here, it's just the whole iteration just kept going with Zorak plus something. It was the next 8 months on Pokemon essentially at that point, like Joe said. And
so yeah, I was gonna say, so for my so should I go next, or Ross, do you want to go next?
please,
Or...
Hey, you guys.
Okay. So yeah, actually, funny enough, my most memorable game that I commentated over was actually the one that Todd missed that year. So it was the 2018 Latin American International Championships, where it was the final was a Buzzwole Lycanroc mirror match. It was 2018, wasn't it? I'm fairly sure it was.
Yeah, it must have been.
yeah.
So yeah, so that was it was Buzzwole Lycanroc mirror match. Tord Reklev against no, not Tord Reklev, obviously. It's Diego Rafchi against Azul Garcia Griego, and Brazilians really, really know how to be hype, right? For like any like kind of competitive like thing, be it esports or regular sports, the Brazilian crowd is hype. And there was a Brazilian in the final, being Diego. Diego had game one, and he was in a position to potentially win game two. He just needed to. He'd done a bunch of setup on his board to take a KO on a bench Tapu Lele GX. All he needed was to draw a Lycanroc GX off of an N to 2, because that was the only draw card he had access to use Bloodthirsty Ice to bring up the Tapu Lele GX and KO it. And he got the Lycanroc GX off the N to 2, and I just scream at the top of my lungs, he gets the Lycanroc! And like the entire crowd goes absolutely nuts. I was commentating along Jeremy Jallin at the time, and just to be like part of that was like by far one of like the most hype moments of like any Pokemon TCG stream maybe ever. So yeah, being a part of that was it was an absolute pleasure, and that will always stick in my mind as my most memorable commentary moment.
I gotta have to go and watch that one back right after you know this, right? Like, so I'm gonna like all these clips, we can find them and try and put them in the comment section here below or the description of the videos. You guys can also watch it back, but I'm gonna try and find this game back and just to watch Freya go like, he gets the like, I can just hear it in my head right now. It's whoa.
Yeah, I watched that live. That was fun. My wife was heavily pregnant at the time. That was April 2018, and my daughter was born in the middle of May. So that was in my, for the love of, do not leave the house, Ross. You live here. You can go to work and back. You stay near the house. So any international championships were definitely not happening. I'm going to skew a little bit negative because it's something you don't always realize, something you don't always think about with commentary. But you need to be nice. Like I've said, very stressful to judge on stream, play on stream, commentate. We all make mistakes. It was actually against Tord Reklev. It was the ECC 2012. Should have been my breakout win of the tournament. I beat Tord in top 32. I'm playing him in top 8. If I win top 8, my top 4 is an auto win. It's Flareon against Rising and Genesect. I 2-0'd in 15 minutes in top 32. And the final would have been exactly the same deck, but not played by Tord. And I would have already beaten Tor with the deck twice. And I lose top 8, bearing in mind I got a very good route to the finals, because I attached Silver Bangle to the bench. And like 2 days later, Tord messages me going like, dude, why did you attach to the bench? If you attach to the active, you knock out my only Darkrai and you win. And I was like, I hadn't slept. So we've all done dumb things. But I was commentating a game. It was, I won't name the players or the decks, but it was top 8 of an international championship. And I think it was with Joe. And I'm watching this game. And one player has got the game on lockdown. They are going to win the game. We're watching it, and it is just the game is locked down. And they bench a basic Pokemon they don't need to bench. Oh. It doesn't give them board position. It doesn't really do anything for them. What it does do is give their opponent an easy one-prize Pokemon to KO and take the win. And it was a really awkward, it was a very memorable game, but it was very awkward because you were sitting there commentating and you watch a player go from a guaranteed win to a loss based on a very simple, straightforward misplay. And we've all done it a million times. Wow, but as commentators, it's really difficult in that situation because you don't just want to be like, ha, you threw that game away, because that's not nice. It's not fun to watch. That's not the kind of people we are. But it's so difficult trying to commentate a game like that because you need to make the audience aware what happened and how big that little moment was. But you also want to be respectful to the player and the fact that actually it's top 8 of an international championship. This is a nerve-wracking time. So that always stood out to me as a really uncomfortable game, which was really hard to manage times like that.
A really good story to tell now. I can we all been there.
It's the thing is, like moments earlier, we were saying how well they were playing to put themselves in an unlosable position as well. So it's like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, he just did it, didn't he?
Yeah. We all been there. Like we all been something dumb. We all played a card. We think like, why did I do that? And you already let it go. You can't take it back. You're like just sitting there. You just burned your hand essentially, like ow, and you just went into from a complete victory, and you're already celebrating.
Mhm.
You celebrate it way
Say-
too early, essentially.
It's for times like that when you need like a soundboard break and just press it and go. "Da-da-da-da-da-da."
Yeah.
And roll credits, you know, like just
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
um,
We've
like
all done it.
Yeah, we've all
it
done it.
hurts, and well, as you as a commentator, you get like first row seats to watch this happen, and I can only imagine how hard it is to be as objective as possible about this, and shit happens. But speaking of most memorable games, but let's just try to flip this around. Is there was like the worst game you ever commentated? Like, let's start with Ross on this one.
I mean, that's a harsh question. And like I say, I cannot stress enough. I love commentary. I have no negative experiences of commentary. Every single time I come home, I am buzzing and I am just crossing my fingers that another email comes along being like, hey, so there's another stream going on. I love it so much. There's no negatives. And don't get me wrong, and because we're putting ourselves out in the public, there's always a few people out there that decide it's going to be, entertaining to send us fairly horrible messages. And with YouTube, I get that fairly often. It's part of the job. I suppose, it would be back to something like Bilbao. And even that's not a negative, it's a fun little story. It's something really memorable. But it is, it's those situations where I suppose it's where we're taken out of the commentary, where a player has made a mistake and a very awkward judge ruling is happening. And there's nothing really for us to do. And we're just kind of sitting there hoping it gets resolved. And you kind of, in the back of your head that if I was watching this on stream, I'd be thinking, come on, hurry it up now. Let's get through this. But as a commentator, that's not the right response because it needs to be sorted out. And that's the only time I feel ever slightly uncomfortable is where that the viewer experience isn't optimal. And it is 100% completely unavoidable. And it puts you in this awkward situation where you can't really do anything, but it's lagging a little bit, if that makes any sense.
It definitely doesn't sound like a nice thing, like it just sounds really tough to deal with. And what about you, Joe? You got anything on this?
Yeah, I mean, outside of just the judge ruling things, I think it's really when you have more stake in it and it's harder to be objective. So when you're commentating friends and stuff like that, and if they lose or make a mistake, it's hard to try and be objective. I actually recall that Jack was playing on stream once and he shamaned under Silent Lab. And I had to commentate at the time, and I literally just went like, "Oh."
I was on that game. That was me and you, Joe, and the whole game, you sounded like a disappointed parent.
Yeah, because essentially he Ultra Ball, he can't draw any cards. I think he even discarded a supporter with the Ultra Ball, so that he couldn't draw at all. Yeah, I think that's the one that springs to mind, and it's always harder when you have friends like playing. Fortunately, I've got to also commentate friends winning. Tamal won the national championships, Alex Dow's won regional championships that we got to commentate as well. So there's great highlight reels, and you get to enjoy the win with them a lot more as well. So highs and lows to commentating friends, but when you have more skin in the game, it definitely makes your job that little bit harder.
What about you, Freya?
So my one is actually one that I completely forgot about until when we were discussing just before before we started up the interview. Ross and I were discussing, and you just reminded me of this, which I just completely must have been like a repressed memory at the back of my mind. One of the EUIC rounds, I can't remember what game it was. I think was it like a Darkrai Mirror match, Ross? Or was it
I couldn't tell you. I
can't
remember.
But it doesn't matter too much. There was some point where there was a KO done on a Shaman EX, and Ross and I were both looking down. I think at the deck list, we were trying to pinpoint some other piece of information to commentate on, and we looked up, and we were both just talking about the games that are going on as if the Shaman KO didn't happen, and then we had to and then eventually realize, oh, there was a Shaman KO that happened. We just completely missed it. That was pretty embarrassing. That was definitely the biggest head slap moment I think both of us had commentating a game.
And then, it happens, and people are watching the commentary at home. It ain't that easy. I'm not going to name the person, but there was a very, very good commentator at Worlds a few years ago who missed an end. The game ended, and they were like, "Wait, who won?" And I was sitting at home, and I was just kind of like, obviously this happened. And then I sat behind the commentary desk, and I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, it's
now
you get
I
it now.
it.
Yeah.
It is so easy. And Joe talked about the mental fatigue earlier. Essentially, when you're commentating, you are watching both players. You are trying to follow what's happening, predict what's going to happen in the future, make sure you look good, your collar's straight, your jacket straight, your badge is the right way up, because the camera could come back to you at any moment. You need to make sure you're sounding excited, sounding engaging. You've got to think about where you are in the tournament in terms of the relevance this game has moving forward. And you're checking deck lists, because you don't want to say if he finds a super odd to find out he doesn't play super odd. And all of this is going on while you're trying to sound excited and cheery. And it is a genuinely, like, you are locked in, but you are locked in on like 17 different things at the same time.
Oof.
It's so easy to make a mistake. And you might occasionally have somebody in your ear being like, also don't forget this.
Yeah, and it just sounds like, well, an awful lot to take in, an awful lot to try to, and manage in your head at the same time. It's wow. I can only say I have the deepest respect for you guys for doing this, and you've done an amazing job. So it's thanks to you guys. I was also wondering, so if there's like a game you could pick out that like the game you want to commentate, something you would say like that will be super cool, like what would it be, Joe?
For me, it's pretty simple. Commentating a World Championships, it doesn't get better than that, right? If I could ask for cream on top, it would be trying to commentate a UK player in a final, because we've never had a UK winner of the World Championships. Sami Sakoum got close and got a second place.
That was very close
many
indeed.
years back now, and Freya has been our most recent hope in the last few years. But being able to see, and crown essentially a UK champion would be incredible for a world's commentary.
Let's be specific. We mean Masters division, right?
I mean, anyone, right? Masters would be the dream, but yeah, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, I think.
The UK never had a winner in any division.
No.
Actually?
Maybe in VG, I think, in one of the, I'm sure,
Possibly, yeah.
seniors and
Now we
juniors.
have to
I don't
start
think we've had a UK winner. I think maybe in VG one year,
Maybe, yeah.
No,
but I don't follow that as
it
closely.
just came to mind. I was like, wait, I thought UK actually took some victories, but maybe I'm mistaken. But we can always just double check this information. But it's
Yeah.
it was just a curiosity of mine. Like, aside from saying Worlds is obviously a super big deal, but do you have anything to add on this here, Freya? Do you also think the same as Joe here, or?
Yes, I would absolutely love to commentate Worlds someday, especially in a final. But I actually had something slightly differently specific in mind. So I'm thinking to myself, if you want to think about like a Clash of the Titans kind of match that I really, really want to commentate on, imagine Tord Reklev at like the peak of his like strength. I mean, he's still one of the best players now, so you could argue that's still like going on. But that, so Tord like that against Jason Klaczynski when he was in his prime, and like both of those going together, I think that would be amazing to commentate on. I would absolutely love to see that.
Put that down. You got one hell of a game. I think that would be amazing to watch. What about you, Ross?
I mean, Worlds is a big one for me. I mean, I've got 3 personal goals. There are 3 things I want to achieve in my life. I want to commentate Worlds, I want to hit 100,000 subs, and I want to learn to read Japanese. Speaking, yeah, fine, but I want to learn to read Japanese because I keep calling on people to translate stuff for me, and it's getting a little bit embarrassing at this stage. So I'm trying to learn that myself, and I'm actually trying to learn. I'm putting in like time every day, and I'm really going for it. But like for me, Worlds is one of my three giant goals. Obviously, everyone's saying that. So for me, I've always got some dumb little pet deck. Whether it's, I mean, it was Excadrill Spiritomb, the rotation happened, it was Excadrill. And in the past, it's been Donphan Prime, Donphan Plasma Storm.
I see a pattern here.
Shao from Furious Fist. It's pretty much stage 1 fighting Pokemon that attack for a single energy attachment.
Yep.
That is very much how I tend to roll.
Oh, so you can play Urshifu then.
Oh, no, at the moment I'm on Mean Shao, but the testing is not going as well as I would like. But generally speaking, when I get one of these decks, it goes well. You know, I cut nationals with Donphan. I qualified for both the first 2 Players' Cups in my weird Excadrill decks. They generally are good decks, but they're decks that I tell people, and people are like, "You're doing that dumb Wassy deck again." You have fun, man. You go do your thing over there in the corner, away from the people with the real decks.
I'm gonna admit I told Ross that at least on one occasion before. Like, Ross, come on.
Well, I told Joe about Donphan Excadrill Spiritomb. We had this big long conversation where he was like, "You're just playing a worse version of other decks. Play other decks." And I still contend. I got 1264 in Europe with that deck. That deck was legit. But other people don't tend to play my dumb decks. I would love to sit down on a commentary. It could be round 1, I don't care, where somebody is playing my dumb little deck. And I have finally got, and you know, I understand the game. I play a lot of the game, as does everyone. I'm not on Joe's level. Very, very few people in the world are on Joe's level. But I get the matchups, I get the nuances, I know my stuff. But when I get my dumb little pet decks, I know every tiny little bit about every little matchup. And my level of knowledge of that deck goes to ridiculous levels. And I want to show that off. And I never get a chance.
I kind of feel we should set some kind of game up with this exact scenario now, because now I kind of want to hear it.
Someone play my dumb little deck at a tournament.
And
Well,
then I have
anybody
to do colour
listening to this-
commentary instead.
Anyone listening to this, just call out Ross and see if you have a deck for you for play for next Players Cup when it comes around.
Yeah.
Let us know. And with that said, I think we're coming close to the end here today, guys. And is there anything you want to say here at the end? Anything you would like to fill in here before we close today?
I mean, for me, it's just a big thank you. Like, and I've said this many times before, and I hopefully will get a chance to say it many times again. But so many people had to do so many things to get us in this position. Like, you know, we're here because we've done commentary for Pokemon, and there are people in the company that we know and people I suspect that we don't, who at some point had to actually have enough faith in the three of us to go get them on a commentary team. We think these people are good enough. And some of them I know and I've been able to thank in person, some of them I don't. But then it's even going back to people at these little tournaments in Sutton Coldfield and Nottingham who are just kind of like, yeah, fine, I'll play on camera for you and I'll start it and I'll stop it and I'll help you out with this. People letting me commentate at UK Nationals in 2015 when I just kind of rocked up and I was like, hi, can I commentate like all day because why not? And we're talking like hundreds of people over the past like 6-7 years who have all had to be awesome to put me in a position that I'm in. And even like today, like every day I'm getting messages from people offering to help me find products or feeding me information I might not know. And it's just, there are so many cool people out there and whoever they are, and they know who they are awesome and I love them.
That's a fantastic positive note, this, Ross. You're always so positive. How do you do it? It's amazing.
I love what I do.
It's pretty infectious as well. Like I gotta.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You can't be mad around Ross. Even when Ross is destroying your socks at your own wedding, that's another story. Maybe a story for another time. It's a very common Danish tradition that at some point in the wedding, the groom gets his sock cuts off, and then Ross, really not sober at that point, I'm just gonna state that, gets a pair of scissors in his hand, and I get pulled off up of the ground, and he used to cut my socks, and I'm like, I'm fearing I'm gonna lose more than just my socks at that point.
Oh
but
no!
But it went well. I still got all 10 toes, but the stories.
For me, actually, I do have one little fun little anecdote that I would like to share, which is, so I did a tweet thread about this like a while ago, but for the benefit of people like watching, I'll just essentially, I guess, like, go through it again because this is really worth sharing. So, round 10 of the most recent EUIC stream. This was in Germany, of course. I was actually on the Casa desk with Kyle Sukovic, with Puka. We had some water bottles up at the desk with us at the Casa desk. We always do, because obviously, you know, talking a lot, it gets quite dry, so you might want to drink every now and then. Now, I know we've all been to Germany, of course, but for those of you who haven't, sparkling water is very, very common in Germany. So, like, up there, we had a mixture of sparkling and still water bottles up there because, we all have different personal preferences. Some of us prefer still, some of us have sparkling. But the problem was the bottles for the sparkling and still water looked very, very similar to each other. As it turns out, Kyle is not so keen on sparkling water at all. In fairness, like, neither am I. During this game, like, he reached down for a bottle of water. He opened it. He took a swig, not realizing it was sparkling water instead of still. And, like, I turned to my left just in time to see his "oh crumbs" face. I had to stop myself from bursting out laughing. When I see this, like, look at this, which I wasn't able to quite do successfully. And, like, actually, I clipped it afterwards just for, like, my own, like, a record, I guess, to share with people, just because I thought maybe people had to see this. But you could hear me giggling on the clip as well, because I just, like, couldn't, like, hold it in from seeing it like that. That was a funny moment.
If anyone wants a challenge, Players Cup 2. I can't remember the game. There is one game where Joe is talking for like 2 minutes uninterrupted and keeps kind of stopping and restarting. Because I'm sitting here having like a full-on coughing fit. Tears streaming down face. And like, I'm muted on the broadcast, but Joe can hear like everything going on in his ears. So Joe can hear me having this horrendous coughing fit and trying to drink water and spitting it back up and like, crying. And Joe is just sitting there trying to like commentate and trying to like blank me out and cover the entire game by himself. So a lot of love to Joe for that one. But if anyone gets bored, watch a Players Cup 2 and see if you can find that moment.
Guys, we are going to put all these all these clips and videos you mentioned and games, we're going to try to put them in the description here below. But for now, I would like to thank you all for coming here today. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Freya. Thank you, Ross. Thank you all for being here. And for anybody out there, thanks for watching this. Thanks for listening. My name is Stefan Eriksson, and this was another episode of Pokémath. And until next time, bye, guys.
See you.
Bye.